So, a very good morning to you, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to have you all here this morning. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, and that's why I put my curtain here because the sun is shining through. I'm not really particular about the weather, but today, for some reason, I want the sun to shine through. And I suppose that is really significant prophetically. So, you are all welcome this morning, this Saturday morning. And it is Her Genuity Africa Space, Entrepreneurs Coffee and Connect. And people are still coming into the room. We're just a little bit ahead of our beyond our time, but well, it's all good. So you are very welcome. We have a fantastic lineup of well, not many activities, just a couple of activities this morning. This is something that we try to do every month. The Entrepreneurs Coffee and Connect is really, and it's really about that creating that space where we can learn together, where we can be together, and where we can, just I suppose network and become more aware of what we are doing together and how we can leverage on all our advantages. My name is Toluwani Akahome, and I am the convener of the Hergenity Africa Business Women's Network and the founder of Hergenity Africa. And what we seek to do in Hergenity Africa is to build a community in Ireland and on the continent, and of course globally, we are females of African descent who are committed to changing the narrative of the African women, particularly in entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking, and business leadership, gathered together for the purpose of networking, for the purpose of creating platforms where we share ideas, where we bring ideas together and we make it work. A platform for creativity and innovation, a platform for supporting one another, a platform for encouraging one another, and so much more. And this is also a platform where we can turn that what has been called the triple disadvantage of being female, of being migrant for those of us here outside of the continent, and of being of a developing nation, that what research has called the triple disadvantage, to actually see how we can continue to make that an advantage for us. And that's what it really is about. Because I believe that the African woman is a phenomenon. You just have to encounter her in different ways, and that is really significant. And so I am super excited to see all your faces. People are still coming in, and I'm loving it. And really, it doesn't matter how many of us gather, because what matters is what we get out of it. And I'm really happy to have Lerato here. I'm going to introduce her later on when she's coming on. She's a phenomenal woman, and I know that after now, there'll be more opportunities to connect with her. So you are welcome. Our vision in Hergenity Africa is seeing African women globally repositioned, globally recognized, branded as business leaders, as nation builders, as agents of positive global transformation. And it is possible, and it is happening. And I was sharing Ejiro just before we started that I see the lines falling on women, women of African descent, in pleasant places. It's so much more happening now, and it really gives me great joy. So without further ado, let me just take you through a few housekeeping. So of course, please keep yourself muted unless you have to say something, just because we just want to keep that order, which is very important. There's no need for exits or signs, because ain't no fire happening anywhere around here or in your homes. So let's leave that out. So definitely, when you do want to have a conversation with us, or you want to contribute, put it in the chat, or because of order, put your hands up, and there will be space for us to have a really good time this morning. So there's really nothing much. If I turn my attention away from you to another screen, that's because I'm working off another screen here to ensure that everything is done well. So it is brilliant to have you. Ejiro, you're welcome. I'm just saying those I can see on the screen right now. For me, beautiful, lovely smile you have there. Oh, my lovely Gladys is in the room. Beatrice is in the room. Let me see who else is in the room. I'm calling them. Claudia, you are here. Amanda, Tamara, Mioni, you are here as well. Let me see who else is here. I'm just calling you out as I see you on the screen. Well, I can't really see on the screen. Well, whoever is here, thank you so much. I really appreciate you registering, taking the Saturday to be here. And I hope that we have a brilliant time together. Yeah? Yes. So I'm going to hand over now to Beatrice, because Beatrice is one of our newest entrepreneurs in her journey to Africa. She has been with us from the very beginning, when we actually hadn't even been named her journey to Africa, and we're still using the generic African women entrepreneurs. And she had actually been very open about her story, about wanting to find our own space. So when she came to me and said, I got it, I was really excited for her. So she wanted to have the opportunity today to share about her business. And I said, yeah, this is the perfect place to do that. So over to you, Beatrice, and welcome once again to everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Toluwani, for giving me this opportunity to have this discussion with everyone who's on the call. So I'm very happy to do this, and I feel a bit intimidated after your beginning. So whatever I'm going to say, plus what Toluwani said. So I would like to caption half of what you said for my next one, because I was quite impressed with that. So thank you again. Now I would like to share my screen, because like I said, it's the first time for me to do this. So I need some kind of structure, or else I'll go off on a tangent. So if you don't mind, please. See, this is what happens when you don't know half of the things that you're supposed to be doing. So can you see my screen?
Yeah? Yes, we can see it. You're good to go.
Okay. All right. So my name is Beatrice, and I'm here on behalf of Bees Hive Global. Okay. So first things first, who am I? Most importantly, I identify as a woman, a migrant woman. I'm an attraction marketing consultant. I'm sure a lot of people probably wonder what that is. I'm a mentor in all things that are inclusion and diversity in the workplace. I'm also a banker by profession, and I've been doing that for almost 15 years across 3 different countries. I'm also a trained intercultural mediator. I am Beatrice, so I also believe as a person, I am a brand by myself. And of course, I am a mother of 2 girls who I call divas, because they are action in motion and motion in action in themselves. And this is by divine positioning, because this is a role that I was given by God. Now, Hagenuity Africa. First and foremost, why am I part of this group of phenomenal women? I was so impressed the first time we started the group and everything that it stood for. I also believe firmly in that women should have a second income stream, because we're always talking about all the different exclusions that are happening, especially those who are in any form of, and not just women as well, even any other migrant community, say they live in any part of the diaspora. One of the biggest things we have, even with the racial divide, once you have an economic, I would say, handicap, you're actually even put in a worse situation that you are. So I believe our second income stream is primary and integral to helping anyone to deal with any form of exclusion. I firmly believe in women, especially, being financially stable. The gender pay gap and gender roles are also another thing that actually come into play, which means that we're having to deal with patriarchy and culture. And imagine without the finance side of things. And of course, I also believe in hair. Now, I know mine is currently under cover right now because the salons are closed. I'm a dreadlocked woman, but I have to wear my scarf. And I also found my tribe. And my tribe is part of these women who are in Hagenuity Africa, who believe in being entrepreneurs, coming together and being this force to reckon with. So, digital or not? First and foremost, the name that I gave at the beginning was Bees Hive Global. So I'm sure it was, what is Bees Hive Global? Now, first and foremost, the world has become more digital, especially because of COVID-19. We've moved really quickly across from being people who were congregating in offices, in meetings, in people's houses, and now everything has gone online. Even businesses have now realized that the only way for them to survive, other than having a physical space or a physical shop, is having an online presence. So as an individual, I also juggled being a career woman, which meant I had to go into work every day, meaning that I also had to deal with daycare and nursery and, crashes and all that, simply because I had to leave my physical space, which is home, to go to work. I also wanted it all. I worked full time and I used my weekends to do again, the gender roles, as you would imagine, although with some support from my partner. But I also needed to fit everything in. So I had no choice half the time because I had to always make a decision. Am I with my children, or am I at work, or am I doing something? So something had to give at any stage. So the idea of having a digital option, which allowed me to be able to have a little bit of time and own my own time, really, really did appeal to me. So what do I really do? I do something called direct sales marketing. Now, the Direct Selling Association, I would welcome everyone to Google that, because I always get the initial answer of what scheme are you in, because there's always the perception anything that's digital is leveraged towards the side of pyramids and scams and everything else. And most people are very skeptical. So straight off, it's a direct selling association where it helps and offers entrepreneurial opportunity to independent sellers, okay, in the market to sell products and services outside a fixed retail establishment. So if you become part of this business, essentially, anyone asks you, what exactly do you do? You're part of the Direct Selling Association. Now, there are only 200 companies that are members of this, and you can always Google that and find out about them. So how do you join this business? Now, you can see there's a logo on the side saying BizHive Global. That would be where I would ask you to log in, read a little bit on what's on the website, and register with your email and address. I watched a complimentary webinar that one of my business partners, who happens to be on this call today, asked me to watch. Now, honestly, again, I was very skeptical. I did not understand what exactly it meant. Of course, everything I'd heard of was cryptocurrency and online and scams and this. So I was very concerned about that. But I decided I need to change. I know I need to own my time. And my position at work does not allow me to work offline. I have to physically go into work. So all these issues I've been dealing with will continue with me because I'm an essential worker. So I signed up, did my due diligence, of course, found out exactly what I was dealing with. I was provided with enough information, and I also took the leap of faith and decided to now become a digital business owner or an entrepreneur. Now, why? Why would you not join this business? First and foremost, the most common question everyone wants to find out, what exactly are you doing? It is direct sales. 2, there are upfront costs. So that was the first thing everyone says, you know, what are we talking about? There is, because it is a legitimate business and you become your own CEO of your own company. So you are an entrepreneur, you will be paying tax. You need to remember that it is a legitimate business. So there will be some costs associated with it. All details, again, are available on the complimentary webinar. When you sign up onto my website, you will watch about 90 minutes of the webinar and all questions are there. What are the benefits of joining the business that I'm in? We work globally. So that means, it means every woman in whatever situation, right now I'm saying women because we're part of Hegenuity Africa at this point in time, but also males could do it. But it is global. It means that as long as you have access to Wi-Fi, a tablet, you can be able to run this business. We teach everyone from all cultures and career paths. So for example, like myself, I'm a banker. The fact that I am actually doing it and I am a banker, I have a license and I would say a level of, I cannot be involved in certain things because my license would be struck off simply because of being involved in this. So everyone who's in, we have doctors, we have nurses, we have social workers, we have carers, we have stay-at-home moms. Literally, we have every single career working in this business. You don't need any technical skills because we offer you a training. There's a coaching program. There is something called a sales funnel. Again, I welcome you to look up the word when you're doing your own due diligence. Find out what a sales funnel is. You have one already inbuilt and works for you. If you were to run any form of business, find out exactly what a sales funnel would take and what it exactly means. There's also thousands of mentors. Like now, I am a mentor to my business partner, and the girl who introduced me is my mentor, and we both have a coach. So you don't need to hold any inventory because that is one of the things most people think. They imagine if you join any particular group, you then have to buy all these products, get shipped into your home, and then you have to walk around, you know, to different people's places, bringing products with you. So there are no products, so you do not hold any inventory. And again, like I said, the training is by video. It's literally click here, move on to that. So thank you for your time, but I also needed to mention what exactly do we do and what kind of training do we offer? You will run your business using social media. And social media means YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads, and LinkedIn. So if you're already on those platforms and you currently have your own business that you are using to run this, to run your business, you know the power of what the digital space has. So we also teach people who have their own roles and their own passions and their own, I would say, interests using social media as their way to go forward. So I welcome any questions, but as always, please register on my website to get more information. There's a 90-minute webinar, I keep saying that, which you'd need to listen to, and all the questions will be answered there. Again, please follow me on my profile, which is Beatrice Chege, which is my Facebook page. Sorry, my Facebook page is Bees High Global because it is a business page. Instagram and YouTube, and on my personal, be a friend on my profile page, and that's Beatrice Chege. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you on the other side after you watch the webinar. And again, please ask the questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Beatrice. That was really, really excellent. And I'm sure that a lot of people would be able to link up with you after now, to be able to ask you questions. So of course, be on the lookout for that. So it is another welcome to everyone who just joined the room after my introduction. Thank you very much for joining, Mary. Thank you very much for joining Maskapaya, Mako, Betty, Ejiro, Claudia, as you have mentioned it before. But as many that have joined while I was, doing the introduction, you are very welcome to Pergenuity Africa Entrepreneurs Coffee and Connect. And this is a second series in our Women Business. This is the second part of our Women Business series. So I'm really delighted to, Beatrice, you're actually getting comments in the chat room, so please read that. I'm delighted to have Lerato here with us this morning. Lerato is a woman that is phenomenal in the things that she has done. She has actually been doing a lot of things in the space where women soar. So she is somebody that when I was connected with her and I read her profile, I was like, wow, my goodness, this woman is fantastic. So I am delighted to be welcoming her, but I'll just give you a quick intro about Lerato. I'm going to read off the other screen here, so while my face is turned towards you, please understand. So Lerato is currently the Deputy Director General for Export Promotion Development and Outward Investments in the Southern African Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the DTIC. Formerly, the role was referred to as Deputy Director General, Trade and Investment in South African Department of Trade and Industry. In this role, she provides strategic support and advice to the departmental leadership and the presidency on key engagements with global stakeholders for the attainment of the country's economic growth objectives. Prior to this role, she founded and headed Trade Invest Africa, an initiative of the DTI, which is aimed at creating sustainable partnerships with the private sector towards the attainment of greater levels of intra-African trade and intra-African investments. Lerato, in this role, facilitated the IDC, the DBSA, and ECIC's infrastructure and industrial projects into the rest of Africa as part of executing the South African approach, which was refined through the Trade Invest Africa. Lerato was once a diplomat. She was on a 4-year term as a diplomat in terms of economics, when she went to the US on behalf of South Africa, she was in charge of the trade and investment. She was the representative to the US from South Africa. So I've just cut short there her profile. So she is indeed a phenomenal woman in terms of the things that she is doing, the things that she's done, and of course, the things that she will yet do. So it is my absolute pleasure this afternoon to welcome Lerato Mataboge. And I don't want to, I was like, okay, should I try pronouncing this name or not? I said, no, I'll give it a shot. She is an African woman. She's going to correct me anyway if I get it wrong. So Lerato, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our We Mean Business series, the second part. And we mean business. And we mean business. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Toluwane. Thank you very much, Her Genuity Africa. I'm quite excited to have an opportunity to speak to women entrepreneurs, wearing a government hat, being from the government. It's always exciting to speak to people that are literally in the trenches of building our economies, that are creating the actual jobs. All that we can do, all that I can do is to enable and to create necessary partnerships and the environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. So I'm quite excited for this conversation today. So I really thank you for the opportunity and the platform. And also a big thank you to Beatrice, who opened this session with a very, very wonderful pitch. I wish I had your marketing skills, Beatrice, so I may engage you on training regarding marketing and selling. I think that was a great job that you did. So today, Tolu, I thought it would be important for us to be in conversation about the free trade, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think most people, both on the continent and in the world, and I would assume yourselves, being outside what we would deem the diaspora from our end, would be aware of this supposedly a panacea, as it were, the ultimate solution that's supposed to revolutionize the African continent. So I would like for us to be in conversation about what does this agreement actually mean in and of itself, and what does it mean insofar as the advancement of women, insofar as the structural transformation of the African economy, and also to place it in its correct context, because one of the challenges is that the CFTA is also positioned as the only solution right now, but it's part of a package and a toolbox of solutions, and we need to be able to have these conversations and leverage all of them. So that'll be the focus of my presentation today. Slides will be shared a bit later. Okay. With everyone, so that you can at least get more detail and have a better sense. Now,
do you want me, Lerato, to share the slides as you speak?
It's okay. Let me just speak to it, and then we can share with the participants after the conversation.
Perfect.
Because my flow may change depending on the ad-libbing, and it may confuse everybody. Okay. Yes, thank you. So basically, as Africans, our problem remains the fact that we are not as integrated as we should be. So we still suffer from fragmented economies as Africans. We all remember, and we know the colonial project that set out different borders and created different sovereign nations that are not necessarily as integrated as they should be. So when we begin to talk about the Africa growth story, we need to also recognize that unlike, say, a China or an India that is a single market of 1.2, 1.3 billion people, Africa has an equal amount of people. However, it's 54, 55 different states that you have to engage. So there's a fundamental issue that has to be addressed around the level and the depth of integration on the African continent. Similarly, one of the key problems that we are addressing as well is the issue of our low levels of intra-Africa trade. The reason why this is a problem is that we understand the benefit of trade. We understand how trade can be a stimulus to growth and development. We understand how trade can be an enabler to job creation, can be an enabler to thriving entrepreneur ecosystems. So it's quite important that we make sure that the depth and the levels of trade on the African continent, including strengthening trade with the continent and countries. The current problem that the African Union and African governments is addressing is precisely around deepening intra-Africa trade and deepening the integration of the African continent as a response to globalization. So just to give you a sense of how deep the problem is, intra-Africa trade right now stands at 16%. So that says that literally 84% of whatever it is that we trade or that we consume comes from outside of the continent. We are not producing much within the continent. So we are essentially perpetually consumers of products from outside. And this now, when we compare, for example, to Europe, 60% of European trade, where all of you, if not most of you on this call are based, happens within Europe. The production, the trading, the distribution, the consumption is fundamentally European. Similarly with North America, I think it's about 40% of trade in North America, and about 52% in the Asian region. So that says that there's a lot of work to be done insofar as deepening trade within the continent is concerned. So now the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and the negotiations is meant then to assist us to address these issues of low levels of inter-Africa trade, low levels of integration on the continent. Because the real question that we are all aiming to answer is why, is the fact that we need to make sure that we increase the level of production on the continent. So Africa needs to begin to produce what it consumes. Right now, the structure of our trade is we are still exporting raw materials, whether it's agricultural or it's minerals, right? And human, as it were, human capabilities. And we are not adding much value to any of those. And then we are importing value-added products back into the continent. So it's important that we address these colonial patterns of production, right? Similarly, we need to also then address the issue of colonial patterns of consumption. Exactly what I've just said, where we import value-added products from elsewhere. And it doesn't matter which sector, whether it's automotives, it's clothing, it's food stuffs, it's agro-processed, chocolates. So we need to begin to look at our consumption patterns and how we begin to create much more preference for African-made products, African luxury products, African, made in Africa, as it were, as a brand. And similarly, we need to also address how we distribute and how we trade amongst ourselves as Africans. Because again, based on the colonial pattern, our infrastructure always leads from the nearest source of natural resource, whether it's agricultural or mineral, to the nearest exit port. So it's all about take that mineral out. There's very little interconnectivity between African countries among themselves. So it's difficult for us to trade with each other. For me to take a product from South Africa to South Sudan, for example, is quite a treacherous route, whether by road, by rail, even if you try by ship. It's very, very difficult for African economies to trade among themselves. The logistics, the connections are not where they should be. They're not what they should be. So it is for that reason, and I'm saying this because this is a collective problem that all of us have to work together to resolve. Our patterns of production, consumption, and distribution, and leverage different partnerships to improve the Africa story, because it's going to benefit all of us. So what we have decided as an approach at the African Union level, and this has been adopted by literally every African Union member, is that we need to focus on how we integrate the continent. However, this integration will not necessarily follow the model of, say, the EU or the US, where it was very linear. You move from a free trade area, you move to a customs union, you move to. We understand that our problems are deeper. So our integration has to be what we term developmental integration. So this developmental integration is integration that stands on 3 pillars. So these pillars are very important because once we begin to talk about our collaboration, we need to all have an action plan for each pillar, right? So the first pillar is the market integration pillar. So we are saying, how do we begin to integrate African markets, get rid of tariffs where they are not necessary, have regulatory harmonization and the like. So that's the market integration pillar. And this is where the African Continental Free Trade Agreement comes in, because it sets the rules for that level of integration, getting rid of tariffs, how we trade amongst ourselves. The second pillar that is necessary is the pillar of industrial development. because we are mindful that, we can get rid of tariffs all we want, we can harmonize procedures at borders and trade facilitation, integrate our markets all we want. However, if we are not producing, if we don't have an industrial base that we are supporting as different African economies, it's pointless. We won't begin to trade more with one another. The third pillar then that our integration also stands on is infrastructure, because we are mindful that even if we produce, if we are unable to then send those products to the different markets and deal with infrastructure blockages, whether it's road, rail, air transport, shipping, energy even, energy infrastructure, water and sanitation infrastructure that can power factories and manufacturing platforms, then we won't get to the level of development that we need to get to as a continent. So every time we talk about integrating the African continent, the priority is that how do we integrate the markets, get rid of unnecessary tariffs and regulations that don't make sense? Two, how do we begin to focus on industrializing and facilitating investments to manufacture on the continent? And how do we then begin to focus on investments in infrastructure? So these three pillars are very, very key. And the CFTA is but one pillar of the three. I think it's important that we contextualize this so that we can put the agreement in its proper place and support it appropriately and make sure that the other two pillars are equally supported. Now, I thought maybe let me give you a quick status of the CFTA, and then we can have a conversation about what, at least from a government standpoint, what we would like to see as collaboration with entrepreneurs like yourselves, those that operate on the continent and are also in the diaspora, and how we can strengthen our partnership in that regard. So basically, when it comes to the Continental Free Trade Agreement, most African economies have signed onto it. 54 out of the 55 African countries have signed, other than Eritrea. So that's a positive sign. And of the 54 that have signed the agreement, 39 have ratified, and a number of countries are still busy with the ratification processes. Again, as part of progress, we have managed to finalize rules of origin for about negotiations of rules of origin for about 81% of products. What's important about the rules of origin, of course, is that this is how we can stimulate production on the continent, because when we set the rules that say we need this much African content in a product for it to qualify as a made in Africa product, we are able to then at least make sure that we lock in beneficiation, we lock in value addition on the continent. So 81% of the products we've agreed the rules to, so we are still busy with the negotiations for the rest of the rules. What the CFTA will also do is that it's going to establish a mechanism for settlement of trade disputes on the continent. This has been one of the biggest gaps that we have had, that where there are issues around trade, there's no way that governments and or entrepreneurs can raise their matters and challenges. And we know that a number of African economies, there's a lot of barriers to trade, regulatory or otherwise, technical or otherwise. So the CFTA, another positive thing is that for entrepreneurs, it's going to create a platform for dispute resolution. So you can then leverage your different governments wherever you are based to raise some of the disputes and have settlement and the like. What we're going to do now that we are finalizing the negotiations on goods, we are also going to be negotiating trade and services. So we'll have a protocol on trade and services, which will deal with movements of persons, will deal with investments. Similarly, we're going to have phase 2 of the negotiations that's going to look at competition, intellectual property, investments. And then the last phase, phase 3, will be negotiations around the rules affecting e-commerce. So I'm saying this because it's important that even during the negotiations and prior to the negotiations, as entrepreneurs, irrespective of where you are, the diaspora or on the continent, you give a view and you give perspectives on the best ways and the best rules that we need to have under the CFTA, because we are mindful that even if we negotiate as governments, we're not the traders. Government doesn't trade, government doesn't produce, government just enables by using regulations. So the entrepreneurs, which you are, you need to be given an opportunity and a platform to influence the types of rules that we agree upon, the types of rules that we set. And one positive thing is that we've already established a secretariat, which is headed by Secretary General, and it's got a full structure based in Ghana. So there's different ways in which the CFTA, you can access it outside of governments. There's also an independent secretariat that can take some of your issues forward. So now, how then can we leverage each other as government and entrepreneurs, particularly women, for the CFTA? I think one of the most important things is that the African Union has declared 2020 to 2030, so it's a decade, has declared it a decade of women's economic and financial inclusion. So it's a priority of the African Union to see that all the processes and the developmental programs on the continent have aspects of inclusion for women in the economic and financial spheres. So this already says you already have the key, because we are able then as a collective to insist not only to AU level but into individual African governments for their view and perspective and programs that can support the inclusion of women, African women on the continent and in the diaspora. So, and another area is that we need to work together to make sure that the CFTA itself is gender sensitive and is gender responsive. And this means that some of the rules and the procedures that we agree to, we do an assessment of their impact on women. I think we already know that when it comes to an example of land transport and land trade, women are the most adversely affected from a security standpoint and the like. I'll give you an example of some of you who may have been watching the news happening here on the continent around lockdown in the December time. We had huge congestions at our borders where people and traders could not cross on time, and there would be delays of up to a week for people just to cross from, say, Beitbridge from South Africa to Zimbabwe, as an example. The brunt of the people that were stuck at the border were women. Now you can imagine the implications insofar as security, insofar as safety, insofar. So there's lots of ripple effects that impact women much more harshly than men. So it's important that we begin to insist on each and every decision and action, and whether it's a negotiation or it's a policy, it's a regulation, begins to give a sense of how is it going to impact women and what are the mitigation instruments that have been put in place. Another issue is that already we are speaking in a context where women broadly all over the world have been the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I mean, on the continent, even worse. And it's been worse because we've had anyways structural issues that needed to be addressed even pre-COVID, right? I'll give you an example now that only 37% of women in Africa have access to a bank account. I mean, that's quite a shocking number if you think about it. And if you think about what a catalyst just financial inclusion and owning a bank account is for your development, for progress and all of that. So 37% of women have access to bank accounts on our continent. And the last statistic said only 12%. Imagine how huge Africa is. 12% of African women are literate. Because we still have those fundamental structural exclusions where in certain countries, women don't have access to education because their role is just to be married off and to bear children and the like. So these are fundamental structural issues that we need to begin to reverse. And I think what would be also important is that we begin to insist on having accessible language to some of these processes. So when you talk about Continental Free Trade Agreement, it needs to be delivered in a simple way, right? That it's accessible to every woman, and every woman is able to to define the benefits for themselves and not have to necessarily consult lawyers to unpack. Because access and language as a barrier is also an issue. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of that. So what's important for us is that we need strong advocacy from private sector, you know, to advocate for accessibility, to advocate for you know, commitments and regulations and negotiations that are responsive to entrepreneurial needs. You know, again, please remember, governments do not trade, governments are not businesses. So whatever we do, we are bound to get some parts wrong if we don't have, you know, strong enough and loud enough private sector voice. And of course, the issue of intra-African investments, it's important that when we talk about intra-Africa trade, we begin to also speak about how do we mobilize African investments domestically and in the diaspora. It's one thing for us to be going to Europe, to Europeans, to Asians, to Americans, which is good, it's good for international partnerships. But how do we leverage and mobilize you know, investments and partnerships from Africans all over the world to come back and be part of the African growth story? You don't have to be located on the continent, but how do we find ways that there's a link and that there's a direct contribution insofar as Africa's development? Because everywhere I go, you know, when we travel, when we engage, this is the cry, right? To say, I'm an African, yes, I'm based in America, yes, I'm based in China, whatnot. I want to be part of the African growth story. How do I do it? So it's important that we have clear, defined programs and platforms as well for engaging Africans outside of the African continent. So what I thought would be useful as well is for us to also have conversations around now what, over and above the advocacy. I think we need to have separate conversations around how do we facilitate access to capital for entrepreneurs, which is what women would need, and different types of capital, really, you know, export insurance financing, market exploration support. Some of you may be sitting, say, in the UK and you want to assess the Kenyan market and you've got you don't know where to start. Surely there should be a way, if we're going to talk about, you know, strengthening the links and intra-Africa trade and support and investments and the like, that, you know, different entrepreneurs are supported with market exploration. You're given information, export promotion, financial support, infrastructure, industrial project financing. Another issue again will be access to markets. How do we begin to, when we talk intra-Africa trade, facilitate the access to markets in different ways, business missions that we may organize as governments to support entrepreneurs. Those are some of the options available to us. Government-to-government engagements, because again, the engagement between governments is very powerful to enable access for businesses and to unlock and get rid of bottlenecks. And other, of course, non-financial support, we can begin to talk about that. How do we provide you with the necessary strategic research, for example? I mean, we can have, you know, some market intelligence reports that we share. Can we even consider things like establishing a business networking portal and matchmaking portal, as it were, for women businesses? I know that the UN is doing something like that, or they've started. So it's about how do we leverage some of that or support it and have the links between businesses in the diaspora, businesses on the continent, women businesses, partnerships, you know, joint ventures and the like. Dialogue platforms, you know, such as this one is a very important platform. How do we strengthen them and have, you know, greater concentric circles of conversations? And finally, before we open up to the you know, engagements and Q&A, we may also consider lobbying that the AU on an annual basis provides a gender impact report on the CFTA, as an example. That's one of the key lobby points that for me would be very useful, coming from business and coming from women business, to say, you know, you're talking about the decade of women's inclusion, economic and financial inclusion. So annually, if not quarterly, you know, we have proper reporting so that everybody, every African woman, wherever they're sitting in the world, will be able to gauge and see if we're making progress or not. And these are some of the partnerships that we'd want as government to, to advance at the AU level. As South Africa, we're fully behind this. We're fully supportive of this objective of financial and economic inclusion of women. But we need to hold hands with the actual stakeholders that are impacted by this. So Tolu, I thought that'll just an overview of where we are with the EPD&OI, what it's about. The complete solution, it is part of what we are trying to do on the continent. So I'm happy to engage, take any questions. I'll hand back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lerato. So many strong points made there. I was just saying to myself that this is one webinar that I'd love to go back and sit with all over again and just digest the things that you've said. There's so much and just so inspiring, but also very informative. I wonder if, I see Amanda there, she has a question already, and if you feel like you don't want to speak out your question directly, please put on the chat. I'll read that out for you on your behalf. So Beatrice has her hands up, and Amanda as well. So I'll take Amanda's question first. Amanda?
Okay, thank you so much, because that was just loaded. And I think this webinar, I don't know about the other ladies, was relevant to me because one of the things I'm trying to work on is setting up an enterprise that actually addresses the gap between, because one thing that I've seen is that like 95% of people actually have great ideas, but they don't know how to bring it and scale it out. So how do we then bridge the gap between, because even here in Ireland, you come and be like, okay, produce a business plan, do your market research, but not everyone is that literate or has that kind of understanding, but it doesn't mean that they do not have the business idea, so there's kind of like a gap in that support between what is and what needs to get there. And I know that you spoke about like market exploration and all of that. I felt like it was really very relevant to some of the things that I'm trying to do. Okay, now that aside, I know that you've spoken about so many issues. So now my question is in regards to going back into the African markets. There are all these great ideas of what needs to be done, but how do you start at like the level where you are at? Like we all really want to go in and go into trade, because to be quite honest, these are kind of the areas that have money. But how do you go in as like an individual and begin to like find that need to go into that market? Like if I want to begin to trade, how do I tap into what you've said, the resources that are now there, and say, okay, let me go in and now do this? I don't know if the question I'm trying to ask makes sense, but at like this level where we're at, trying to then come in and take a new market or go into that sector without necessarily the right kind of like support. I don't have like 10,000, or I don't have like connections with government to get a tender in it, but I want to be able to break into a niche market that's already predominantly they already have like, these connections. Like I know in Zimbabwe, all the people with money, it's a small circle, it's old money that circulates down to the kids. How then do we begin to break those barriers and individuals and take up that space? I hope my question was clear. I know it's kind of, woo.
Not a problem. Very clear. Thank you so much, Amanda. Okay. Tolu, can I take a few questions and then respond?
Yeah, perfect.
Let me take maybe 3 or 4. Then we can do rounds. You can guide in terms of time.
Okay, that's perfect. We have about 15, 20 minutes to go with the questions. So Beatrice, you want to pop in there with your question, please?
Yeah, mine was not actually a question, it was more like a comment, in as far as, because just hearing Lerato speak there, it actually resonated a lot with exactly where we are at as women. The biggest issue we have is the whole financial exclusion side of things. Now, if we can get, like Amanda is talking about, say she has an idea, but she's already have it in, there's a culture already thinking that there's money in particular pockets. How about if we went in as entrepreneurs, use the digital space? This space is allowing you to have the whole world, you are advertising your business to 7 billion people, not necessarily just one. And you have that action, and you're not necessarily selling one product, you're selling you and what you're about, but you're leveraging that. So that would be the first thing, because once you start earning from your business, you then open up the financial side of things. So I just thought maybe Lerato mentioned about how do we get people to that stage? How about we start harnessing the digital aspect? For example, the network that Genuity Africa has, it is a network of women, meaning that I should be able to tap into that group of women. Now make this a little bit bigger. Let it go out. And then governments are there talking about, like, our biggest issue with all the business partners who work in Africa, they have a problem with shipping. So if we were part of this, and we were 100, 150, 70 big voices, like Lerato said, who come up and say and challenge government, look, we want to bring this product that I have, my own product, Amanda's product, and someone else's, but we do not have the infrastructure because shipping is an issue. If I can get the shipping issue sorted through government intervention, then we move to the next phase. So that would be my comment in as far as how else. First, we use the digital space. 2, we have the network. And 3, we have the collaboration with the government person such as Lerato. And again, like I said, stop using words like CFTA, use words that, down to the grassroots, people understand. It means we are coming as a connection. Use the digital space. Everyone has a laptop, everyone has a tablet. That information can go in there. There's a lot of trade happening in WhatsApp groups. Now imagine if there was a government WhatsApp group with all that information and links to how to help them to facilitate that. So that would be my comment and question, and that. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we bring Ejiro in.
Yeah. Hi, Toluani, and hello, everyone. Amanda, I would love to have a conversation with you because there's something you said and it resonates because I have thought about that. And if somebody's already on the ball, we just need to talk. Lerato, I am so inspired to hear you speak. My heart, I am in the right place. Let's just start with that. For me, when you were talking and you said our problem is really deep, that's where I come in with mental health. And my question will be, what are we doing in Africa when it comes to mental health? For us to begin to create this unity we're talking about, we've got to love ourselves. And Africans, we don't know how to do that. This division that is on ground is just a representation of how we are experiencing ourselves internally. And that is what we bought from colonialism. And for us to come together, it's not the road. The roads, we can build them. We need to come together first. Yeah. We can't see the togetherness. That's why the physical part of it is not happening. Once we begin to actually love ourselves, like, please tell me, my husband and I were just talking about it this morning when we're going out. There was this construction on the road and we're like, oh my God, these people are, fixing the road again. But we thought, yeah, we're fixing the road again. But in Nigeria, for example, some road that this man or woman is going past, 10 people have been paid to do this job. And we are still going through this really bad road because nobody cares. If I do not respect and honor myself and respect and honor you, I will not make it better for you. We have bought the lie that being materialistic is what it is tied to our self-worth. Our self-worth has nothing to do with money. We are such beautiful, loving people. Oh my God, if we can begin to work on that, we are... Just let me pass it over to you, Lerato, because I can't stop when I talk about what potential, like that is untapped territory when we talk about the human beings and what we can become as people. Remove money. That is the lie that we have been sold and we bought. If we can just shift that, we know where we're going and we can come together.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Go ahead, Lerato.
I'm so happy that this is being recorded, because this intervention by jurors is powerful. It's really, really powerful. But let me go back and start with Amanda's question. I hope we'll have a last round, possibly. I don't know, time-wise. So let me try and answer as quickly as possible to allow other. Amanda, I think you posed an important question: where to start and how to start. But the one thing that I would like to ask of you is, please get yourself out of the negativity and the corruption cycle and the corruption challenge, because then you'll never get started. You know, I know what you've just mentioned around money circulating within, you know, elite hands and doesn't quite trickle down to everybody else. It's a problem, I would argue, in many other African states. But don't let that stop you, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm an example of such a person that, for all intents and purposes, I was not even meant to be in government and do the government work that I do. You know, you just have to build the links and the collaborations that you need. Keep your mindset positive. I think Nigeria is also encouraging all of us, stay focused on what matters. So here we are today having a conversation, but one other connection that you have that can assist you with information and empower you. So don't get too caught up on the story and the corruption story, because that's how we perpetuate it, right? There's still room for you. The table is big enough. There's still room for you. So for me, it's about building the connections that says, what kind of programs do we need to support entrepreneurs like yourself? One of the things that we are doing in South Africa is strengthening our exporter development intervention and program. So what we do there, and I oversee that program, is we identify entrepreneurs that already have a product, and it doesn't matter in what sector the product is, and who have a potential to possibly export their product or have a growth potential, right? So what we do then is to provide different levels of training and intervention and incubation to get those entrepreneurs to the level where they can begin to trade externally. What we may need to have a conversation about is that, how do we build similar networks for companies like yourselves in the diaspora, African businesses in the diaspora? Because interestingly enough, we've got a lot of partnerships with European development agencies that incubate our own companies for growth and development as part of this exporter development. So is that something that, since you're already there, that we can find sort of a triangulated level of support? These are the conversations I'm excited to have, because we can begin to see how we can make a difference and move the needle. So that you're not left in limbo. You know, you're not quite in Zimbabwe, so you can't benefit from Zimbabwe interventions. You're an immigrant in Europe. So how do we begin to also make sure that you have access to those sorts of support mechanisms? So I would be happy to have further, more tangible, practical conversations around what's possible in that area and how we can advocate together, whether it's at the EU level or individual governments, to have those measures. The measures are many, you know, exporter development, export promotion and support. I can give you at least the toolbox that we use in South Africa to empower our entrepreneurs and see how we can scale it for sort of women in the diaspora like yourselves, who have an interest in the growth of the continent. And Beatrice, thank you so much as well for your comments on financial inclusion in the digital space. Spot on. The sad part is that we are still dealing with sort of, you know, second industrial revolution issues as a continent when everybody else is in the fourth. So we need to also be mindful of the speed at which we need to catch up. We're playing huge catch up. I mean, with of women that are literate on the continent, the catch up. And, I don't think I need to add to what you've said. It was powerful, it was inspirational. We do need a change of mindset. We need to make sure that Afro-pessimism we turn that into an enemy, because, everything African is still considered backward, dark, whether it's product, whether it's service, whether it's person. I think you've seen Meghan Markle and her stories. So we need to deal with the Afro-pessimistic notion that is permeating society. So this is where you can also guide us on the tools that we may need to use. And if we're going to talk about women, bringing women into the economy, we're going to have to deal with some of these things. So maybe there are programs we can work around where this particular important element that is always ignored because it's not seen as the hard issue, it's the soft issues. But the soft issues are what make the hard issues impactful. So, again, let's have a conversation about how we can elevate these particular types of intervention, to the policymakers, to be mindful of that. So I'd be happy to champion whatever I can, in the South African government and the AU, if possible. Around that. I saw, Tolu, if I may, someone was asking about the CFTA secretariat.
Secretariat, exactly. That's what
Yes.
I was saying out now. So
yeah, so it's a fully fledged secretariat. They're based in Ghana. The actual Secretary General was appointed or elected by last year. He's a South African, Wamkele Mene, and there's different commissioners that deal with different issues. So what I wanted to say as well, linked to what Amanda had said, and Beatrice to a degree, is that we also have access to that secretariat, even yourselves as entrepreneurs and as a collective, you've got access to secretariat to raise issues around investment, trade, and the kind of support measures that you want to have. That's the one. Two, there's also the AU Commissioner on Trade, who's in Addis Ababa. I think it's Mr. Ambassador Muchanga, if I'm not mistaken. I'll just verify, from East Africa. Again, the AU Commissioner on Trade's responsibility is also to play that advocacy role to advance, priorities for governments and for basically the development of the continent. So these are offices that part of, outside of individual governments, like you're talking to me as a representative of the South African government. You can also talk to the AU machinery through these offices. That's what they're there for. There's a commissioner for science and technology, commissioner for health, commissioner for, so those of you that are in those sectors may also want to leverage those particular offices, but they're there precisely to hear from governments and from African citizens, as it were, whether or not you are in the rest of the world or on the continent, to advance your cause. So please be mindful of those structures that are available to you as well, to use individually or as a collective, as a lobby group. I'm happy to share contact details after this conversation of both offices. Then, at least you can always have them on hand as also part of your access points to deal with African issues.
thank you very much, Lerato. That was so, once again, really inspiring. And I think it gives us, I hear the sound of hope in the room, actually, and that sound of wanting to get up and go. And of course, it actually kind of I see something organically developing even in the room in terms of collaborations. And I'm going to be speaking with some ladies afterwards in terms of even the subcommittees in Hergenity Africa that we can form to address some of these issues. And definitely some of you, your voices are quite loud in some areas, and we will explore that in detail, and also definitely be linking up more with Lerato, who is definitely our expert and who will help us channel our energies, our perspectives in the right direction. Absolutely. So any more comments or questions before we move on? Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I'm working in between.
Check.
Okay, I think Beatrice, is that your hand that was up from before?
I think I was clapping and then it ended up to raise hand. Sorry. But anyway, just to add, now that I have the volume on, I just wanted to say the whole idea of women and not having bank accounts, that really struck a chord with me, and not having financial literacy as well as just literacy in itself. I'm originally from Kenya, and we have a very, one of the biggest cooperatives was actually run by women, and we call it the SACCO movement, which is more like a building society for those who live in Europe, or the credit union here in Ireland. And it's actually made of women, and it was called Kenya Women, Micro Women Finance. So all it did is got all these different women in the local sector to come together, form the groups that they do, and they do like what we would call a merry-go-round. And they realized that this SACCOs became actual bank equivalent, almost offering financial standing. So even working with such groups to talk about teaching them how to work using the digital space, and getting those bank accounts, or those SACCO equivalent, credit union accounts equivalent, would be something I would be so excited to get involved in, and especially having a government arm on that from an African perspective. I sat on a credit union board here in Ireland, and one of the places that they work on their foundation is in Ethiopia. And the amount of people that are actually, their biggest work and their biggest amount of customers and everything is actually done by the foundation. But it's such a small arm of the entire credit union society here in Ireland, because there's the need for it. So that is something that we as the Africans should take on. So for us, by us, I think that's something that we should really be involved in, because I'm a banker. I give financial advice to people here every day. Why can't I use that passion and that whole access to and do that to our people? Because that 16% you said, that was painful. That was painful. So that's, thank you.
Thank you.
Comment on that, Lerato?
No, look, wow, I'm actually also impressed that, you know, there are already solutions. You know, we're sitting on a mine, what is it, a gold mine of solutions that we can begin to unleash on the continent. I mean, just listening to Beatrice now, it says, here, there's a place to start, you know, to deal with the whole financial inclusion process. There's already a base at which to start. But if we don't talk to each other, we don't get to know about that. So I'm quite excited for what will come out of this, because I'm hopeful that we're not having a once-off.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Even amongst yourselves, even out together, you know, we use this as a springboard for solution, that we can have a conversation a year from now and say, wow, here's the one thing that out of this conversation on a Saturday, we actually achieved together. I would really be pleased to see something like that. So I'm quite energized listening to yourselves.
Very good. Excellent. And you can see, and that's why I always say that the African woman is a phenomenon. And if we're a phenomenon as individuals, how powerful that we are when we are in the collective and we're speaking with one voice. And I suppose this is the time for us to be speaking in one voice, really. When the issue about literacy has always been one that sat inside of me for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's why I started, particularly why I started Rogate College, which is an online college. And one of the initiatives we're running is Back to Work initiative for African women, because it was something that that really, as I said, resonated with me. And I've been able to link up with a few countries, you know, people that I know in a few countries, to see how can we get more women, you know, into literacy space, especially in relation to entrepreneurship education, giving them the tools to start and grow their own businesses, even from the grassroots, you know, and empowering them in that sense. Because when we talk about empowerment, we talk about it even from the point of view of those who want to empower, but not from the point of view of the people who want to be empowered, and helping them co-create what is value for themselves, you know. And that is the agenda we are pushing right now, even here in Ireland. We want more co-creation initiatives, not those that, you know, the people who think they know what we need, are given to us, but the ones that, you know, we co-create and have power over to shift the dynamics in our favor. So it's really been a great opportunity here to have this conversation. And definitely, as I said, I see a lot of subcommittees rising up from this, getting all of these wonderful ladies into the conversation beyond this, and being able to also start new things, not just here, but things that will impact Europe, impact the continent. And I see the ladies in this room, powerful ladies, doing just that. So definitely, we'll be keeping you in the loop, Lerato, in relation to that. So thank you very much. So we just have about 6 minutes to go. Any last comments? It's a going, gone stuff. So any last comment before we share with you what we are doing in terms of Ejeniti Africa? I'm actually counting in my head.
So everybody is covered, right? Nobody has.
I think we are. I'm really amazed that they didn't have more questions about the African Free Continental Trade Agreement, because that was such a sore point. But it is testament to how good you are, Lerato, because you just covered it in really basic language that helps us to actually see where we can find ourselves within the initiative. So that is really commendable, Lerato. So I mean, it does show that you've been dealing with so many women, and that is really great. And you know, by the way, you know, it was Kunyalala that connected us.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yes, and imagine I've only met Kunyalala one time when she came here in 2018 for the Ireland Economic Trade program that they usually do, and it was just a blessing to know her. And since then, we just kept in touch. And I said, "You must get me somebody. You must get me somebody, Kunyalala." And I think I mentioned that because that is the power of networks. You know, I could never have met you if I hadn't known Kunyalala. And if I haven't, someone actually I was in South Africa when somebody put my name down for that investment, that trade and investment program. And she said, "You are going anyway." And I said, "Okay, no problem." And then I met Kunyalala, and we've kept in touch since then, since 2018. You know, and I always say that absolutely, we're just 5 handshakes away from the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles. 5 handshakes away from Obama. You know, 5 handshakes away from Joe Biden, whoever are the big names in the world. It is about networking. It's about the right network, building a solid social network, and about the collaborations that come out of this. So it's not just, it's a Saturday, and I know that you didn't come here to waste your time. So it's not just about us sitting in a room and chatting and talking about this, but actually what the follow-on actions are from them. So I will be putting ladies to task on the things that you said this afternoon. And so people who know me know how to come after people, you know, so I'll be to you on that. Thank you very much, Lerato. So any last words from you, Lerato, before we let you go?
Yes, no, thank you so much. It's been quite a pleasure and an honor really to talk to you and to get so energized. I also want to ask you, I did it was one in November, but I think it was there in January. So there's a TEDx talk that I did. It's called Why Intra-Africa Trade Matters. No? You can just search it on YouTube, Lerato, Mataboge, and Why Intra-Africa Trade Matters. I think please share it with your children, because the point was to make it as simple as possible so that from the younger generation, we begin to become involved and we begin to set the agenda, right, for where our continent is going. And it starts with basically simplifying all these concepts to even the younger generation, so they can be a bit more involved, and they don't feel that the language is exclusionary. They don't feel that, you know, they don't have a role in there because it's technical, it's legal, it's the negotiators all have law degrees. The point is, intra-Africa trade should matter to each and every person in a village, in a city. So if you can, please take some time and have it. It's pretty short. I think it's about 13 minutes or something like that. You can then use it even, you know, to educate some of your, you know, if you're mentoring anyone, because we really need to have a growing, sizable wave of women, particularly, that are engaged in matters of trade and matters of investments on the African continent. It's time for the African woman. I mean, our trade investment is so driven by white men right now. We're not displacing them, but we need to also have our seat at the table, essentially. So can we please work together and create that table or create the seats? But thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time that I've spent with you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tolu. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll be talking to you soon. So just before we go, I'm going to call Amanda Tamara Mnyoni, and I like calling her full name because I like it so much. And she's the administrative officer in Her DTIC Africa, and she's going to be sharing some things with us. So on to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much. I feel like we could have cut so that the impact was just so great, but you have to listen to me one more time. But yes, thank you guys for coming on to today's webinar. Please be sure to follow us on our social media platforms, while they're on Facebook, while they're on Instagram, while they're on LinkedIn, and while they're on Twitter at Genuity Africa. As I always say, please make sure to invite 5 ladies. The next time you come on to the next one, just send 5, like just 5. Start working on them now. Start marinating them now. Good stuff take time, ne? So start talking to them. Start bringing them. Start having those conversations. Start making them understand that there is space, for them. And yeah, let's begin to network. Please follow us. We'll have this webinar properly up on our website,
On YouTube.
And on YouTube as well. So please do that. And pretty soon, this stuff is going to be expensive to access, guys. We're going there. Trust me, while you can see that the information that is here, costly, we're going there. So start preparing. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Amanda. So the things that I can say, I pushed them to her to say that, and she's very good in her space. She is one of my right-hand people, and I really celebrate her every single time. Young woman on fire. Sometimes I ask her, Amanda, where are you going? What is the rush? But she's so much on fire, and I really, really celebrate her every single time. So thank you very much, everyone that's been here. We're right on bang on 1:30. And so that's the end of the webinar officially, but not the end of networking. So please interact in the room. Stay in the room, interact, talk to one another, see where we can get the conversation, pushing it further than we have this afternoon because of time, because we do need to be in that place where we are sharing ideas. We need to be talking more. We need to carry conversation forward, and we need to push those boundaries that sometimes they're uncomfortable conversations, but we need to have them. We need to be able to tell one another the truth, and in being able to tell another truth, we own our spaces and we step powerfully into where we can bring change. So absolutely, thank you so very much. God bless you. So it's the end officially, but let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wish I could stay, but I have to run. Toluwani, I will be in touch. Amanda, Beatrice, oh my God, Lerato, I will be in touch. Take care. Thank you all so much. Take care. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
I actually wanted to stay as well because I really wanted to talk, but I forgot it was a coffee. So I didn't bring a coffee and I'm freezing.
That's okay. We're going to have the conversation. We're going to get ourselves into the room and have more conversation about this. We need to talk about this more and kind of like deconstruct some things so that we can know where do we start from. And then we can bring all of those ideas into action plans and then take it forward. And then we can be able to share those kind of action plans with Lerato and some other people that are influencers in this space, and then they can support us in carrying it forward, because we definitely know that there's something in the offing for us.
Yeah, because I think a lot of what we're doing is so individual, and I love the fact that we have the space to be able to network. But imagine if we also had a common goal, even in our own individual spaces, to see how that can work. So, and that's what I was saying about the whole WhatsApp group. People do things together. You are your own person, but there's this thing where you know that if you need this, there's this person to do it. And if we have a common goal, like the whole financial literacy thing, that one really hit me, because I'm thinking the women in Kenya were literally selling vegetables on the streets. Now they own their own parcels of land, they own their own houses, and as they say, you educate to empower one woman, you literally educate a village.
Absolutely. Let me ask you to hold your thought for a moment there. People are saying bye-bye. Bye, ladies. Thank you so much. And we'll see you the next time. We'll keep you posted on what we're having next.
I'm sorry, just before they go, sorry, I forgot one important thing.